Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel and welcome back to the From Computer to Cardboard series. Now, this is the first episode of, I don't know, the second season or whatever, but we're up to the second game of the series. We just completed the Against the Storm game. We ran through it, we designed it, we built a prototype, we playtested, we got some ideas of what that final product should look like. Now we're on to the second game. We are talking Outer Wilds. Now, this episode is kind of all about talking about Outer Wilds and what kind of things are essential to the game experience and what kind of things we need to see in the prototype for it to be considered a success. Now, here comes the warning. The thing that every single Outer Wilds video has on YouTube, if you have not played the game, receiving spoilers for Outer Wilds removes your ability to play the game. It can only be played once, and it is possibly the greatest video game of all time, and so you should go and play it before watching this video. That said, let's talk about that thing in particular. We need to design a board game that can be played exactly one time. I think that is the main challenge that we are trying to accomplish here, but there is still a lot of things within Outer Wilds that are kind of like core mechanics that I think also need to be expressed for a person that encounters them to go, oh yeah, this is an Outer Wilds game. So let's kind of start with some basic stuff. I think a looping cycle, I'm not sure how exactly to put that in to a board game. I don't want to have stuff timed. I'm kind of really against sand timers and clocks in board games for the most part. Most of the time it isn't. Humans are not very good at perceiving time so accurately, and stuff like a sand timer, you can kind of miss it, and it's really fumbleable. The one time I do like the sand timer is the distance between actions, where you turn the sand timer over, it starts trickling down, and then when you notice that the sand timer is complete, you remove it, put it somewhere else, and then you can take that action. I think Galaxy Trucker works this way. And I think that probably doesn't work very well here. We could. It does communicate that you're running out of time feeling, that Outer Wilds kind of does, which is fine. Then we have exploration, which is a big aspect of it. You're not really given any roads to follow. You just have points of interest that you know exist. And I think illustrating the solar model of the sun and the different planets and stuff like that is going to be kind of important. And so putting them around is probably a good place to start. What else do we got? There is kind of like a large interconnected narrative, sort of. We see Solanum's journey, for example, with the Quantum Moon, where a specific character will interact with specific set pieces to deliver to you information. And you do actually get to, talk to Solanum on the Quantum Moon, and exposition is delivered to you, and you can ask questions and stuff. But a lot of the other ones is like, hello, I am an engineer. I'm writing to you to tell you about this device that I've created. This device performs this specific function, and so on. So I need to find a way to communicate to the players an explanation on what the different pieces do, in a way. And then how that's going to tie into a greater narrative. Now, I kind of think that there's an extra problem where if I create so it is one-to-one to Outer Wilds, the narrative's the same, the puzzles are the same, a person who has played Outer Wilds, which most people playing the board game should have played the video game already, comes and engages with this thing and goes, well, I remember this, I know what happens here, and it diminishes their ability to solve the problem and the puzzles and stuff that you present to them, because they've encountered this already. They've already had some level of knowing what's going on. And so I think we want to change the narrative slightly, like maybe distort the perspective or add another layer to it. And I have some ideas about that, but it's tough. Like, I don't want to dilute what makes the original good, right? And why the Against the Storm board game is very different is because it's incredibly mechanical, right? Everything is so reliant upon the other things. Everything is so regimented and orderly. Whereas Outer Wild is kind of just like, oh, I'm just gonna bumble around. That I died doing this, or I ran out of time doing this, or this thing killed me, or whatever. And then those things teach you stuff. So I might go through and make a list of key interests, right? Like we'll have anglerfish, right? We have to have each of the different planets. So like Deep Bramble is going to exist, and it's like, what does Deep Bramble tell us about the narrative? Deep Bramble exists to communicate the anglerfish to you, right? And then why Deep Bramble was a problem for we're blanking on the name of the ship, but the ship that crashed there and stuff like that. How are we going to show off stuff like the signal scope, a tool that you need to use to solve problems that are in there and stuff like that as well. So trying to figure out what our key pieces of interest, what each planet is trying to tell us, and then picking out which of those things are going to be essential to communicate in the board. And I'll give you an example, right? I think it's Ash Twin. Yeah, I think it's Ash Twin. On Ash Twin, there's a room that's not super easy to get to, and it's an anglerfish skeleton. And it's got like the little light at the top. And then there's writing from the children as to like how you can get into the secret area, because you can see into it, but you can't get into there straight away. You have to go around the sort of under thing. And then once you get into there, there's more writing in there that explains to you that the anglerfish are blind. And so that if you are quiet, they won't come and get you. And so Dark Bramble, the place where the anglerfish eat you, and I'm pretty sure it's in between, that has this piece of information, right? You have this journey where you encounter the problem, you bump up against the problem, and you can't solve it because you don't understand what the thing is that will stop it from happening. And then you encounter the information solution later, which I think is something that's just one example. There's a lot of other places in the game where stuff like this is handled in this way. And I want to kind of design with that same intention. Create puzzles where you fail somewhere, it resets, and then you try again, which I think is a challenge. I think it is going to be a challenge. I think this might just be a very hard series in general for me to do. And that was kind of the idea. The Against the Storm was a challenge because it's the biggest scale. I normally make very small games, and the thing that I'm good at is looking at the small parts of something and trying to make it, get as much juice out of the orange, so to say. And then working with something as big as Against the Storm, I go, well, I have this big tech tree. I have like 34 different resources. How am I going to have the players engage with all of these things? And then, interpreting the different mechanics and making them interact with the player and stuff like that. Outer Wilds is going to be kind of the same, except I think I can't repeat things as much. I need to have like a lot of unrelated, single specific experiences, and I'll have to design some tools and how it's all going to interact together, which I think is fine. And I'm excited to dig into this and try out some of these things. And I think the first goal is to create some maybe hidden components would be kind of interesting. Because in theory, when some of these problems in a retail environment can be solved by how the box is packaged. Some things that are hidden to the people playing the game comes from the packaging, right? So you could have like your regular box, right? And then there'd be like a panel in it which would be like only open under, this code circumstance or whatever. And then you open it up and there's like a miniature of the anglerfish or whatever. having something like that where I can find a way to obscure things. Now, because of the nature of this video series, I get to cheat a little bit. I get to be a little bit lazy with some stuff, because normally when you're designing a board game, the goal is to create a product that can be fully manufactured. It can be replicated perfectly identically, across every version of it, and it can be run without you present, right? And that is not the goal for this video series. The goal for this video series is for me to run the playtest, the game to function, the prototype built to communicate all of the ideas and things that makes the video game unique, and then show promise that it could potentially be an adaptation, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Every first playtest of every prototype is going to be a bit janky, and the thing is to not spend so much time developing it and iterating it like you normally would. I'm kind of doing the first 20% of the job, right? Where I get to the prototype, we run the first playtest, we go, okay, these things were problems. Let's fix them. What does fixing them look like? Okay, this is kind of a steady thing. I start playtesting more, and then run through and do that kind of stuff. I don't have to do that for this video series. I just have to succeed at the first playtest, get to that milestone, go, okay, and then we do a meditation on it and go, what was good, what was not good, what will we do from here? Because the main problem, obviously, is that I can't just make an Against the Storm board game, manufacture it and sell it. I can't just make an Outer Wilds board game, manufacture and selling it. And the purpose of this series is more to teach you, the viewer, about how the sausage is made and how everything comes together and the ideas and stuff and the process that comes to building the prototype and then testing it out and then what it kind of looks like from there. So I can cheat a little bit. If I need to have hidden information from the players, it can just be sitting in my pocket, knowing for exactly when it needs to be delivered to them. Like, they might engage with something and I go, oh, well, yeah, here, bonk, is the anglerfish, right? They don't need to do any stuff like that. I don't need to hide anything from them in particular. I can act as a pseudo game master to smooth over some of the things. Whereas running Against the Storm, it's all regimented. It's all written down in the rulebook, and everything should function as intended. Everything should function as it happens. So sometimes we mess up. I messed up some of the rules and stuff in that playtest, but it's not about that. That happens. It does happen, and it teaches you why you made the decisions to not, have things the way that they had. Or sometimes you make a mistake, and it's because players are used to this thing, or it should run better like this, or whatever, and then you kind of go from there. Which I think is fine. But our goal is to just nail the concepts, right? Have a good pitch for a game, basically. Build the prototype, test it out, make sure that it actually functions. Because I know that it sounds like a low bar. I have made games with full intention of everything going great and maybe publishing it myself and all this kind of stuff. Building the prototype and I'm in the teach. I'm explaining it to the person I'm playtesting with, and I'm like, I'm having a fucking bad time already. There's no way this other person can be having a good time. And you just kind of feel it in your bones that something is going wrong. So the goal is to feel like I have accomplished making a prototype. And ideally, I keep it as close to a board game. And I know I kind of opened this series with, I think it should be an escape room experience, but I'm kind of limited a lot in what resources I have and locations and space and components and stuff. So I'm going to be trying to take some of the key ideas of an escape room and take some of the key ideas of my board game experience and try and find something in the middle where it is a little bit more interactive, a little bit more narrative is delivered to the player, right? Might create some NPCs that, will have things written, like maybe they just have cards which dial up, or the cards are denoted or whatever, that are delivered to the player, and then they can, because we could write out some dialogue trees, and that can just be a card that the player reads, and then on the back of the card will say, when or what thing that you've done to receive that piece of dialogue. This is all very possible. And so that's the goal. And now I need to go on and figure it all out. Now, like I said, an escape room and these kind of ideas are not my specialty. So stick around for the next episode because I do actually have a celebrity guest who is going to come on and talk about escape rooms with me, help give me some ideas, help get me started on the path to potentially building the Outer Wilds escape room type experience. So if you're excited to hear about that, stick around. I'm going to put the playlist up on the screen. If the next episode is already out, that is where you can go and find it. Otherwise, if you missed some of the earlier stuff, if you missed the Against the Storm stuff, you can go and check that all out. That will all be in there as well. It is all one big series. As always, I'm going to have just a random video up there because we do some other cool stuff that you might enjoy as well. And the subscribe button, because I greatly appreciate all clickers of the subscribe button. And then stick around because I'm very excited to see how this Outer Wilds board game experience is going to come together.